What's the best low intensity build in Guild Wars 2 after the Visions of Eternity expansion release? That is the question I want to answer today in what else than another tier list. I'm Stürmer, and as always, special shout out to our dear supporters that help me keep the lights on. This is a tier list about what is the best build, in my opinion, usable as a low intensity, so a low effort build that you can play while still dealing a lot of DPS in a group scenario, maybe even in a solo scenario. This is what I want to rate today. This is my personal opinion on the matter. I try to be objective, but I will take my biases into the tier list. Please keep that in mind and please bear with me. Let me know your takes in the comments down below, what you have to say about this tier list and my placements. I have a different kind of tier list than the usual one in terms of like S to D tier, because I think it's quite hard to rate low intensity builds in terms of like what is low intensity for you. So I have different tiers. Let's jump straight in. So as you can see, we have here of course the D tier, which is stoned, so to say, so it's just not working as a low intensity builds. Then we have the C tier for core classes, we will talk about them in a second. Then we have B tier, and we have then the, so to say, more top tier builds. The first three tiers here are more like, they are not like below each other, they are more like, you have to imagine they are next to each other, so like on the right and the left side of each other, not vertical sorted, because I think it's hard to say that hands-off builds are better than easy builds that are spammy but receive a bit more damage, or simplified builds for people that just want to have a easier time learning the rotation but still want to deal a bit more damage. So this is what I mentioned here. So this is like simplified only, means that it's a simplified rotation and therefore gets a little bit more damage than builds that are just using one button or two buttons in hands-off, for example. But hands-off builds are easier for people that just want to press one button. That makes sense. And then you have easy builds, which means that you don't have to weapon swap, for example, or that you don't have to understand anything about what the rotation is, which is the like difference to simplified, where you have some kind of rotation to follow. In easy, you just spam all the buttons that you have. But they have high APM, so high actions per minute, or rather high actions per minute compared to hands-off builds, but they are still very easy because they are just like press whatever comes off cooldown. So with that much said, let's put in the core classes. I will not put the core classes in a different tier in the normal rating, because I think the core classes are very hard to rank. They typically have less damage than a lot of the elite specs. That's just how by design. So you can judge where you want to place them. I put them in C tier because most of them are not working that well. There are some exceptions here that I would put higher. So for example, Core Thief is possible. You can use that. It's in hands-off build. However, it will be one of the weakest ones because it does the least amount of damage. You can play Pistol Thief. It works surprisingly well, of course. You will see this pattern. It will be better for the elite specs as well. And then we have Core Warrior. I think Core Warrior is surprisingly good as well. It is with the arm straight line, for example, it carries it very hard. It does not have as much damage as other builds, but it's still very good. I would say personally Core Warrior might also be for me in like low hands-off tier, but we will keep it there for now, for maybe we have to demote it later. And then of course Core Necromancer, Elementalist, Mesmer, and Revenant and Ranger definitely not as good. Maybe you could make an argument for putting Core Engineer and Core Guardian a bit higher, because especially Core Guardian could also be in hands-off, I have to be honest, because of the hammer build. So those three specs definitely deserve a spot very high because they are definitely very good, whereas the other five here definitely don't deserve a spot anywhere higher because they're just too weak in terms of damage output and utility that they provide while being a low intensity build. So definitely not in higher tier than C. Core Engineer is the only exception here, I would say, a bit in between. So I would say low intensity Bladestone. Yeah, I mean, you could make it work, but I think it's like, for me, a B tier build, because it's like, it's somewhat challenging to make this build deal huge amount of damage while also not having that many button presses. It's like you always charge your Dragon Trigger and then you stand still for a bit. Yes, that's low intensity, but as soon as you're out of the Dragon Trigger, you have to charge it again. And it's like, for me, it's a B tier build. It does not deserve any like high S tier, so to say. Then we have Paragon. Paragon, I just made a build about it. It's low intensity Paragon, really, really good. Hands off, definitely, for sure, really, really strong. I will try to sort them a little bit from left to right. So left is better than right, but Paragon definitely really, really good. Check it out if you haven't already. Builds to most of them here as well. But the Paragon build, really, really easy. Conditioned Paragon, just pressing mostly auto attack, really, really strong. Of course, take it a bit with a grain of salt. There might be some balance changes coming in the future, but this is not always taking into account that the numbers is like insane, but they will just probably change by a little bit, even if there's a balance nerf or buff to it. So keep that in mind. But I'm rating the identity of the build mostly. So for example, Condition Paragon as a low intensity build will, even if it gets like 1k nerf or something, it doesn't matter. Or even it gets buffed, it does not matter. It's a hands-off build that works very well. So if you're a Warrior fan, this is really, really good. Then you have low intensity Spellbreaker. I think that's also somewhat of a low intensity build that works surprisingly well. I think it's definitely weaker than Paragon, but it's definitely also in hands-off territory for sure. Then we have Berserker. I think Berserker is, for me, it works. I think you can also make a decent hands-off build there. We will have to see. It's, for me, hands-off means you have to press like at least maximum 4 buttons. That's maximum here. And I think Berserker is here on the verge there. Let's leave it like that for now. Next up we have Guardian. So Guardian, you can make a surprisingly strong Dragon Hunter build, of course, hands-off, absolutely top tier. Dragon Hunter, definitely one of the best, if not the best, hands-off build in terms of like raw damage and just letting the auto attack cast, and that's about it. It's really, really good, really, really strong. Definitely deserving a spot in the highest of highest in hands-off tier. Then we have Low Intensity Willbender. I think Low Intensity Willbender is best played as a healer. That is somewhat of a meme, but I think it's not like the best healer. I think Low Intensity Willbender is like, it works. It's a hands-off build for the most part, but it's not like as good as a DPS build as, for example, Dragon Hunter. So I personally would say it's hard to rate this one for me. I would say if you play a DPS build, it goes into B tier. If you play like some kind of healer build, it goes into low hands-off tier. So I will leave it there for now. Core Guardian is definitely better than Willbender. Then we have Firebrand. I think low intensity Firebrand is just stone tier. You could make a build around it, sure, but I think it's like just not designed around it. You have so many buttons to press. You could make an easy but spammy one. Yeah, you could make that argument, but I personally think it's like you are shooting yourself in the foot by picking a class that has insanely amount of buttons and saying, I want to have a build that is not using them in the correct order. I think that's like you picking the wrong class for that. So I think personally it's don't. Maybe I'm wrong here and you just don't agree with me. Let me know. But I personally think Firebrand is just, don't make it a low intensity build. I would say Luminary is somewhat similar. You can make a low intensity simplified Luminary for sure, but it will not be as good as a hands-off build in terms of low intensity. Keep that in mind. Luminary is just focused around having somewhat of a rigid rotation around swapping in the forge, out of the forge. So it's really important that you actually have at least some kind of rotation. Therefore, simplified only. You could also make that an argument to say Firebrand is also in simplified only, but I would say even if you follow a simplified Firebrand rotation, I would say it's still not low intensity because the rotation will still be around like 20 things to memorize. So I think that's not that simplified then anymore. That's why I would say don't. Yeah. That's now going to the last heavy armor class, which is Revenant. Revenant, of course, Herald, I would say very easy hands-off build. You can just press your clint skills and then after that just auto attack. Really, really good. Works. Doesn't have the craziest damage, but it provides a lot of quickness. So it's a nice quickness support. One of the rare builds here that provide quickness and is not just a DPS build. Really good. Hands-off for sure. Then we have Vindicator. I think I tried to make a low intensity Vindicator work, but it's not that easy. It's really not. I think it's always focused around dealing some damage. I think you can make it somewhat simplified, yeah, and then it works okay, but you have to follow some kind of rotation. It's not like you can just press one button of cooldown. It's not really working that well. I would say simplified only for Vindicator. Then we have Conduit. I think Conduit is also somewhat like similar to a lot of other classes where you can make a hands-off build, like using spear auto attack and casting all the other stuff off cooldown. That can work. I personally think that is like maybe deserving a spot in hands-off tier, but it uses at least 3 buttons. Keep that in mind, at least 3 to 4 buttons that you need to press to make this work. Build guide about it coming soon as well. Then we have Renegade. Renegade is one of the ones that I would say is like, you can make a low intensity Renegade build work. Yeah, you can make that work. And it works surprisingly good. I think as soon as you do a simplified rotation, it gets very good, but I think you can even make a hands-off build, yeah. Revenant, especially Condi Revenants, have the ease of use of just putting Melex in, then just using auto attack and have some nice damage. Therefore, this works very, very well. Let's go to the medium armor classes. Medium armor classes, let's start with Ranger. So we have Untamed. I think Untamed easily going into simplified only. It is very strong for a simplified build, very easy to follow the rotation, but it has a rotation and then it gets a nice damage output. Definitely low effort build, not the lowest intensity, but low effort, works very well. Then we have Druid. Druid is weird. Druid is like, I would say you can make a simplified Condi Druid, but it's one of the worst simplified builds, I would say. It's just not as good. It's quite spammy at the same time while having a rotation. I don't know, not the biggest fan of that one, but it works. Then we have Soul Beast. You can make a simplified Condi Soul Beast, and you can make a that works surprisingly well as a low intensity build as well, hands-off build, so to say, but I would say it's still a little bit more because Power Soul Beast exists as well with the simplified version. So I think Untamed and Soul Beast highest of simplified builds, I would say personally. Really, really well, but has a little bit more of a rotation than the hands-off builds, which only press 3 buttons of cooldown to remind you here. And then lastly we have Gale Shot. I just made a video about the permanent Gale Shot bow camping Gale Shot, which is surprisingly good, and I expect some buffs to it. So that might be even better in the future. I would say it's like either a hands-off build, or you could make an argument for somewhat easy but spammy, because you press your buttons of cooldown, like one button is like 2 things all the time, like the 2 skill, like every 2 seconds or something you spam that one. So I think that might be easy but spammy. I think that might even get buffed with the one trait that increases the damage of your Gale Shot bow, for example, in Gale Shot, and that might be actually a valid pick then. Yeah, so I think that is surprisingly good. Give it a try if you're a Gale Shot fan. Let's go to the next medium armor class, which is Engineer. Amalgam, I think Amalgam is, you can make a simplified Amalgam work. I think it's not as good as a hands-off build as other Engineer specs. It's just simplified and then it works, but if you only press 2 buttons, that's not enough. So I think simplified only here. Then we have Mechanist. I mean, what can I say? Yeah, one of the best builds in entire existence is Rival Mechanist. If you just want to have a hands-off build, I would say it's definitely on the verge either being a hands-off build because you just use the auto attack, then it goes into high of hands-off, or if you use all the rival skills of cooldown, then it's easy but a little bit more spammy. And it is top tier here, like 40k DPS, it's so good. It really is. One of the best builds here in the entire tier. I just want to make it clear that there are one button builds, hands-off builds, yeah, and Mechanist can be played as an easy build and gets even more damage then. So keep that in mind. Then we have Scrapper. I think Scrapper, I would say it's more like a simplified only. It's somewhat similar to Amalgam. You can make it a little bit easier and deal less damage than normal meta build, which is somewhat rotation heavy and priority heavy, and both of them work very well as a simplified build as well. And then we have Holosmith. Holosmith is one of the ones where I would say it's like borderline impossible to make it really, really good, because even the meta build doesn't have the craziest damage output, and then you simplify it and it gets even less damage. So for me, it's like B tier. I think it's one of the rare cases where I would say it's definitely not the best option to play that. Let's go to the last medium armor class, which is Thief. And what can I say? I mean, Thief specs like Pistol, Pistol, Daredevil and Pistol, Pistol, Deadeye. I mean, they are just on top of hands-off. You know, just Pistol, Pistol. That's carrying it. It's also Core Thief. You know, playing a power-based Pistol, Pistol build, it's like hands-off and you unload and unload and unload. That's it. Really, really strong builds. Deadeye probably a bit better than Daredevil, but it's really, really good. Like really, really easy to pick up. Like good damage and range damage, it's just really good. It just doesn't have cleave. Keep that in mind. It has piercing, but no cleave. So that can be a little bit of a negative if you play in Fractals a lot or something like that. But if you play strike missions and raids and stuff, this is really, really strong. And then we have Spectre. I think Spectre, you can make an easy but spammy Spectre build that works. I think that is good. I think Spectre is better if you play it as a simplified version though. I personally think it's Spectre simplified only works surprisingly well with Spectre as well. But you have to play Condi and therefore cannot use Pistol, Pistol. And they are just the best on Thief. Let's go to the new one, which is Antiquary. You can make a very strong Antiquary build, hands-off Antiquary build, Pistol, Pistol again. Yes, currently the damage number is the highest of the hands-off builds. But the hands-off build for Antiquary is probably getting nerfed with the damage that currently meta Antiquary for PvE DPS reaches 60k. That will probably also hit the Antiquary here. So I will probably say this is after the nerfs, like somewhat close to Deadeye, but for now, definitely high of the highest. Let's go to the light armor classes now. Let's start with Mesmer. I think Mesmer has one of the worst low intensity builds. You have simplified only Virtuoso. You can only make that work as a simplified build because you have to stick to pressing some buttons and somewhat, I would say, not a real rotation, but you should at least upkeep and pressing those buttons. You can say it's somewhat easy but spammy, but I personally think it's more like somewhat close to a simplified only build, and it is a Condi build that is very defensive, so I think it's really, really good in that regard. One of the best simplified builds, but the damage output is of course a little bit lower than other builds, because the normal DPS version also doesn't have the highest DPS. Then we have actually, surprisingly enough, we have a hands-off Necromancer build guide about coming it very soon. It's very easy to play, just pressing like 3 buttons, and it reaches over like a lot of DPS, over 30k, 32k DPS. It's really, really good. Hands-off build for sure, works very well. Then we have Mirage. Mirage is one of the specs that, yeah, you can play Staff Mirage or something like that. I would say that works. That can be some kind of like easy but spammy build, because a lot of people don't really like weapon swapping, and that's what you need to do on Mirage as well to make it work. I think even if you play it, I think it's not the best one anymore. I would say easy but spammy. That's what I would say here. And then we have Troubadour. I really tried hard to make a low intensity Troubadour work, but it's just really bad damage right now. And even if you go for more buttons, it still has bad damage. It's very hard to make that work. For me, it's one of the rare occasions where I would say it's maybe even don't tier. Yeah, I think either you play a full support build or you play a low intensity like other elite spec of Mesmer, but Troubadour is just not really like made for low intensity. It's really not, sadly. It's quite spammy in that regard. Let's go to the next light armor class, which is Necromancer. You have a low intensity Harbinger that works surprisingly well, really, really good. Hands-off build, works like 3 buttons or something, good damage, somewhat squishy, but does its job very well. Then we have low intensity hands-off Reaper, really good. I made a Shroud Camping solo build even for Reaper. Its low intensity Reaper is surprisingly good, like really, really good. High of the highest, I would say here, for sure. And then we have Scourge. Scourge is easy but spammy, for sure. It always requires you to spam your shades and stuff like that, and F skills. But if you just don't want to weapon swap, Scourge is the go-to option. It's like very, very good. It has a lot of damage, a lot of utility. You can play even Alacrity DPS build, and it's just easy and spammy. That's it. Then we have Ritualist. Ritualist currently has crazy DPS numbers, and you can easily make it an easy but spammy. But I think if the damage numbers gets nerfed, I might be able to put off a hands-off build that is somewhat more realistic, but I personally think it's like more close to Scourge. The damage output is obviously insane right now, but I rate it now with the damage nerf in mind, so I think it's easy but spammy. That's where it's deserving the spot. Now let's go to the last class, which is Elementalist. Elementalist has a very good low intensity, easy but spammy Tempest build. Elementalist, you will see the pattern here. It's quite hard to come up with a low intensity builds that only presses 1 button on Elementalist. Elementalist just has too many abilities to press that you could press, so in the end it's quite hard to come up with a build that only presses 1 button that actually does decent damage. So I personally think most of the Elementalist specs will go into easy but spammy tier. Tempest is one of those examples. Low intensity power Tempest, fresh air, spammy but very easy to play. Then we have low intensity Weaver. I think you can make a simplified Weaver. I think that is the best that you can get done on Weaver. It's just like there are so many attacks, even more than normal Elementalist. It's quite hard to make a Weaver build that is really just pressing 1 button. Then we have Catalyst. You can play a somewhat simplified fresh air Catalyst or something. I think Catalyst is like not perfect for low intensity builds because again it gets another button press, makes it a bit more spammy, while also being not the best damage output with just 1 skill. So I personally think like simplified only or high B tier for Catalyst. And then we have Evoker. I mean, Evoker is like the best of the best right now for easy but spammy. You go into low intensity mode with like removing 3 of your 4 elements with the specialized elements trait, and then you spam all your fire attacks. That's it. Easy but spammy, even better than Mechanist right now. So good, you can play it as a quickness DPS build. It will get nerfed, don't get me wrong here, but even after the nerfs, I think it's one of the best low intensity builds if you want to have a build that is easy but spammy. And this is my tier list. I think I did not always like going from left to right here because there are so many builds and you have different mindset, so to say, what you want to play. If you want to play a Mesmer, you go for this one. If you want to play a Thief, you can go for any of those three. So I think it's a little bit harsh to say I rate it from left to right. So they are more like very close to each other in the hands-off department, and the easy but spammy build as well. And then the simplified ones, I would say only for people that want to have a bit more advanced, low intensity, low effort, but get also a little bit more damage possibly, but they cannot go even lower in the APM and rotation requirement. And then we have, of course, B and Don't tier, which I would not recommend as a low intensity or low effort build. Like I said, let me know your comments on this. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to leave a like. If you want to see more content like this, don't forget to subscribe, and I hope to see you all in the next video.